Hi, my name is Jason Georgi, Field CTO for Prism Access and SASE at Palo Alto Networks. I'm here today to talk about what a SASE framework can do for your organization. This session is going to cover three main areas. First, what is driving clients to evaluate SASE architectures? Next, how SASE can solve today's and tomorrow's cybersecurity challenges. And last, what clients should look for in a SASE. So what's driving SASE? Well, let's start with what a SASE actually is. It's an acronym and a framework that was launched by Gartner, and the acronym stands for Secure Access Service Edge. And the idea is organizations have been shifting, both in terms of mobility, user mobility, going from working in the branch to potentially anywhere, to where resources reside, from data centers to internet resources like cloud, SaaS, and even different types of web apps themselves. So with these shifts going on, the internet is playing a bigger role, right? A more pervasive role in how users access resources. We're going from essentially private networks, LANs to other LANs, or LAN across the WAN to another LAN, to a non-private and uncontrollable network, which is the internet, to access these resources. So when that's the case, what SASE needs to do is converge networking and security to best control transit through the internet and embed security with it. That's what's going to allow organizations to take advantage of what their users are doing in terms of mobility, and allowing greater and more rapid cloud and SaaS adoption. So it's really an enablement framework, and this enablement framework is going to continue to help organizations as we move forward. So that's how it started. Now here in March of 2021, Gartner released new guidance around road mapping. And the roadmap is really around how do we now go from the idea of a SASE framework and what that should look like in terms of components, to how do we start consolidating, right? SASE gives organizations a really good opportunity to start consolidating things across a common use case, which is secure user access. And users can be really anything, right? A user is just a consumer of a service. So that could be an employee or a person, or it could also be a device or an IoT type device. So it's all about how do we then, if we've got users, being people or devices that need to access resources anywhere they are, how do we get controlled access securely to them? And how do we do that in a more consolidated and converged way, in a way to simplify the environment, cut costs, and really reduce complexity. By the way, we are a licensed distributor of this Gartner report. So there's a link at the bottom of this slide. If you want to jot it down, you can go ahead and download your own copy of it to see exactly, where this latest guidance is taking us. So look, here's what you already know. Like I said before, the idea of what SASE is trying to do is enable cloud and mobility and things like that. But these shifts that have been going on for several years now, probably going on 7-8 years, cloud, mobility, digital transformation, they're all here and present, and some have been accelerated by COVID-19 and the pandemic. But the outcomes we're trying to achieve are much the same: improving user experience, increased reliability and scale, and improving security reach. It's the cross-section of these things that it winds up being important, because we've all heard we need to improve user experience, right? That optimal path, improving, path between users, whether in the branch or remote, to their cloud and SaaS resources, consistency, whether the user's on-prem or off-prem, and then productivity, right? Digital is all about improving productivity and agility. So users have to be able to access things, quickly, securely, without impacting their job. Right, but now we've taken a more serious approach to this due to something like COVID-19 and so many of our users being remote, and to the usage of cloud services as a transit inline capability. We're going from providing optimal path to critical path, right? And that's very important when we think about how many users we were sending home at the start of the pandemic. Business continuity was what was at play, and that included remote access infrastructure and things like that. So now it's not just about providing an optimal path to, even at the time, maybe web browsing traffic. We're now sending critical user and data through this service. It needs to be reliable, and it needs to scale. The internet being that primary area of networking for so many of our users that are remote, if we're still in that 60 to 80% of our users working remote right now, that's let's face it, that's the majority of our networking right there. And we just need to make sure that whatever we're using and passing through that has the scale it needs to absorb what we're doing there. And then collaboration tools, things like, whether it's Zoom, Teams, or anything else, but just tools that our users use all the time. That's a way to keep them productive. But we can't rest on our laurels as far as security goes. We can't continue bypassing or split VPN tunneling applications because of performance or offloading head end capacity and things like that for remote access. We have to maintain visibility and security of these tools, which comes right into the next area, security reach overall. We need to inspect all traffic types. There's a whole lot more traffic that goes over the internet than web, and we need to be able to inspect and look at it all. Full security stack. It's taking what we understand to be that perimeter type security and extend that to the cloud, rather than moving to cloud delivered services that only look at part of traffic types or certain types of applications or protocols. How do we make sure we get that full security stack available anywhere we need it, all while complementing our zero trust strategy? So look, I talk to customers pretty much all day, every day. It's really what I do as the field CTO here at Palo Alto Networks. And so when I talk to them about what's driving change for them, what is making them turn towards SASE in general, these are a few of the themes that keep coming up, right? Modernizing and consolidating across common use cases, which is, again, users, no matter where they are, need to access a resource, no matter where it is. How do we get those things linked up securely? Adaptability and scale for unpredictable work dynamics. We've had shifts going on from getting people, plan to get back into the office to now backing off of those plans, now re-energizing them and kind of taking a cautious approach. We just don't know. So we just want to make sure what we do is adaptable, right? And we can handle it, and we can go with it in stride based on what the business wants to do. Flexibility, right? We're looking at platforms and things that, one, allow us to consolidate, yes, but are flexible enough to address what we need to today. What is that compelling thing that we need to solve for right now? But also look at what we're going to do in the next, year, 2, 3, 5 years, and make sure what we invest in today is strategic enough to get us there, right? So what we're looking at right now does not become invalid or unnecessary in a few years. We want to make sure that we're staying relevant. Automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence, it's critical to keeping up. Obviously, a lot less about getting hands off of keyboards, more about optimizing the resources we have, automating responses to things that we observe, getting better telemetry across our environment, looking at all enterprise traffic flows for things like threats and data loss. How do we just get better and more intelligent with this? Advancing business cloud adoption, right? So it's not just about enablement and getting out of the way, which was a task of ours many years ago. Now it's about how do we make that experience better? How do we overachieve getting the business to cloud in a secure way? And then cybersecurity, innovation, and partnership. This is about the provider of the service, right? Making sure that you have somebody that you're going down this strategic journey with that is putting this front and center, right? That innovation is going to continue. Smart acquisitions are going to continue, making sure that if you say, we're going to go down this platform path, and this is a long-term journey, that person's going to be as committed to it as you are, if not more so, right? So it's all about that partnership. Now, taking a layer down, right? How do we now address this from a security specific perspective? Well, really, we've been dealing with checkboxes and compliance for a long time, right? We do this, check it off. All right, we meet that requirement. But really, as we now look at something that is meant to be more long-term, we can't really just do good enough anymore. We have to go beyond. We have an opportunity to make things as secure as possible, the most secure option available. So let's do it. And that's kind of where this first bullet's going is, like I talked about before, though the perimeter has eroded, that traditional perimeter of, a four walls approach or so around our resources in favor of cloud and different virtualized services, that's all understood, known, and really what we're trying to address. But that feeling of security that we had with perimeters just felt stronger for a long time, right? So how do we then maintain that perimeter feeling, even though things are everywhere? And that gets into the next point too. Again, internet traffic isn't just web. We think of lift and shift of cloud applications. We think of SaaS applications that use UDP. There's a lot of things that a lot of the security architectures out there can't solve for. So what do we do about that? We can't just continue bypassing and not looking at certain traffic because it doesn't work through the security options available. We need to inspect all of it. So we need to find the right platform that will. Application bypass list, split tunneling. I already talked about this. That increases risk. Everything we stop looking at and looking at for threats and data loss is what's going to leave us vulnerable at the end of the day. And now that there are options that can close those gaps, not closing them is just irresponsible. Insider threats are forcing zero trust network access to go beyond identity. If Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning taught us anything, it's that identity, though is good and foundational, it's not quite enough. We need to make sure that we're not just addressing the identity piece, but then once a user is attached to that service, what are they doing with it? And is their behavior, corresponding to their job duties alone? And are we mitigating the insider threat? So, that kind of plays also into the next one. Third parties aren't necessarily considered insiders, but we have to give third parties and a lot of contractors access to our resources. One, so we can be successful and leverage them to do their jobs to make us successful. But two, they need to access what they are told to access and do with those resources what they need to. The concern about that is the fact that we don't manage these endpoints. And so if we're not doing inline DLP, for this type of access, what are we actually doing? And this is where some of the software-defined perimeter products in the market are starting to have issues with a lot of customers, is that they're saying, okay, this is a good use case for an SDP is contractor access because it's a layer 7 based access. The problem is once that contractor or third party attaches that resource, there's no threat prevention or data loss happening between the user and that application. So that's a vulnerability gap, right? And so how do we then go about closing that? And cloud. Now we're looking at the fact that I think we could solve, and 80% is probably on the conservative side, maybe 85% of network security use cases can be solved with a cloud delivered solution. But the reality is there are still valid use cases for firewalls on-prem or in the branch, especially when we're talking about VLAN inspection and things like that, or at the front door of a VPC. So when we're talking about enterprise traffic flows, no matter where that user is, no matter where the resource is, it varies. And the use case of an on-prem or a firewall device type may still be valid. So how do we then integrate with what we're doing in the cloud to the on-prem solutions, making sure that we get that consistency? So look, let's take a look at now how SASE is solving today's and tomorrow's challenges. What are we trying to solve? What we're trying to solve for is what I said before. We've got users, and it doesn't matter where they are, at home, on the go, or in the branch. And so what they're trying to access, it could be anywhere, data center, cloud, SaaS, and web. So what we're trying to solve for at the highest and simplest possible level is simplified yet secure, fast, and reliable access between any user and any destination. It's that simple. So now how do we go about addressing that? Well, the current state that most of you are probably, observing or part of right now is a little complicated and disjointed, right? We've got secure remote access with a tool or two or three providing that service. We've got internet and SaaS security. We've got next-gen branch with branch firewalls and or SD-WAN, something like that. But each of these typically have their own policy, management interfaces, and even teams and resources to manage them, right? So, we've got some complexity here. And this is what, SASE is really starting to try to solve for. Most SASE solutions out there are reducing some complexity, right? Most of them kind of look at it this way. They go from, what we had, spread across several products in a few domains was now more, two products essentially for two domains. Private app access is one with one product. Internet and SaaS security is another with the SWIG product. So that's how most are tackling it. The problem is SASE is supposed to include the ability to have a complementary, fully integrated or platform-based SD-WAN. So then there's a third-party SD-WAN integration required. So it's better, but they're still somewhat discrete in a lot of cases. You still have multiple policies because a lot of those SASE vendors, private app access capabilities and secure web gateways use different policies with no rationalization between them. So you really are simplifying some, but maybe not completely, right? But the biggest problem that is out there with a lot of them is the security element. And this is where it's a architecture thing, not really a vendor versus vendor thing. And so I'll talk about that here a little bit. So what are we talking about when we say lacking security? Roughly 70% of business internet traffic is web-based, so vast majority of it. The problem is, what about the other 30%? Most of these security solutions delivered from the cloud today are designed to address web threats and inspect for data loss across web ports and protocols. Again, there's a lot more than web out there. What are we doing about the rest of it? 53%. Palo Alto Networks, we ran a study against a bunch of customer traffic and found that 53% of all threats, so a majority, are non-web based. So kind of piggybacking off of that 70% being web, 30% not, well, 53% of threats are non-web based. So now what are you doing about the other 40, so you're solving for 47% of the threats. What about the rest of them, right? And so how do we get better at stopping these threats that we're observing out there? And then 0%. All right, so this is the percent of threats and data loss that a software-defined perimeter can inspect for, right? They're just not designed to do it, and none of them do it. So when you think about how we're mitigating against web threats, we're doing a good job. What about all other internet traffic? Not so good, right? And then when we think about software-defined perimeters in terms of zero trust network access and things like that, we're doing a good job with identity and layer 7 based access, but we're not doing a good job with threat prevention or DLP. So how do we continue to get better at that? Because if you are comfortable with these numbers, really any SASE on the market will do. There's no doubt about that, because they all seem to cover, the majority of what we're seeing out there in terms of traffic types, a minority of threats. But okay, we'll survive. But really, we won't, right? And you're not okay with that, and that's why not just any SASE will do. So what we're solving, right, when we start talking about what we're trying to solve for, is making sure that we have a fully cloud delivered platform. So nothing required, on-prem delivered to make that service work, other than a means of creating connectivity, so a tunnel from a user or a branch location to the cloud service. But we're unifying the security and policy that by sending all traffic to a cloud service, you can reduce and eliminate visibility and inspection gaps, right? Because there's no split tunneling. There's not one product handling data center and cloud traffic, another product handling SaaS and internet traffic. Is all one. All of it's going to one cloud, and then the cloud's going to inspect the traffic and then route it off from there, all with SLA backed performance and reliability. And so this is what we're talking about in terms of, being ready for today and tomorrow. It's the modularity of the integrated architecture. What can it solve for, right? If your challenge today is replacing remote access, either for scalability or improving security, great. You have a solution that can do that. And down the road then, when you want to replace your secure web gateway, or do something different with third-party access in a more secure way, or implement branch DIA, wherever you're starting, we have a way to solve that particular problem. And then you just leverage that platform to continue moving forward. This is the better approach, and you get this out of a comprehensive approach to SASE, rather than kind of piecing it together with a couple of different products. When it comes to looking at internet and SaaS security, you should not let yourself be limited by protocols, right? Be able to inspect all internet and SaaS app traffic, by doing your secure internet or web gateway with a firewall as a service. That is going to give you complete visibility across all ports and protocols, the ability to inspect across protocols and applications that are not proxy aware or proxyable, and then do better overall with CASB, both inline and with APIs for out of band, and things like browser isolation. But really the bottom line is here, the ability to inspect all traffic. I talked about that 53% a while ago of being non-web. Well, a lot of that is DNS based. So some solutions out there do have DNS security. So you're probably covered, with that security for some of those. But then about 25% that's left. So a quarter of all threats fit into things like JSON RPC, which is used for crypto mining, UDP, FTP, SMB v1 through 3, all of these things that, the reality is, certain security architectures out there, specifically web proxy based architectures, can't do anything about it, and so you just need a better way to look at that traffic. On the zero trust network access or private app access side, it's good to start with identity and have that foundation that, you're validating the user, the device, all that posture before allowing access to an application. So you're a default deny shop. That's fantastic. Now take that zero trust of no access, implicit or inherent, based on connecting to a service, one step further, that once they do, you're inspecting that traffic for threats and data loss. This is going to give you a better posture when it comes to your third parties, your contractors, and preventing insider threats. Because if you think about somebody that is an insider that has access to download or upload to an application or resource by policy, if that insider is rogue, what is to stop them from uploading malware to that host or from exfiltrating data that they shouldn't if you're not running a DLP policy in line? We have DLP policy running in line everywhere else we can, that's feasible. Why not in this particular area for remote users? I think we just need overall to do a better job with that. So that use that Kipling method when it comes to zero trust. Who's going to access this? Who is it, a user or a device? So a person or a device. And what about them, right? Are they authenticated? What's their identity? What object group do they belong in? And then what are they trying to access, right? So do they even have access to this application they're requesting? No, good. Nothing happens from there. Session's over. If yes, what are the conditions? Is it an employee with a company issued device running the client that then has full access to all applications? Or is that same employee also trying to access those applications with a BYO device, like a phone or a tablet? Maybe they should have adaptive access based on those conditions or where they might be traveling, right? So make sure that the conditions can be valid, but then inspect it, right? Making sure we can inspect traffic for threats and data loss. How do I equate that to what we look at? I think about it when I was traveling, and we'll probably get back to here shortly. We think about going to the airport, right? And we think about going through, the TSA checkpoint. So I've got my ID, whether it be just a state ID, driver's license, or a passport. I've got my boarding pass. I go to the TSA officer, hand them my papers, right? They put the boarding pass down in a Penta scanner. Green check mark comes up. Look at the ID. Look at my face. Make sure everything matches. Okay. You're a good traveler. We know who you are. Now you can go straight to the lounge of your plane, no additional stops for you. I might think that's kind of convenient for about a second or less. And then I'm a little scared because, okay, I've got bags on my shoulder and in my arm, and you didn't even ask me to set them down, right? You just said, go straight ahead. I might trust myself, but that TSA officer has no business trusting me, right? Or the person in front of me or in back of me who's also a known traveler. So the right zero trust approach is not just to validate the user and identity. It is to take the step of making sure that we can put the bags down on the bag scanner, walk through the body scanner or metal detector. So look at the payload for threats. And that's what a better zero trust network access approach looks like. So one cloud, one inspection capability that translates to all traffic types to any destination, making sure there's no visibility or inspection gaps, giving you the most secure option available. That's what you need to be looking for. So that translates right into the next section. Customers should really focus on three key areas. One, what is the most secure option available? Am I looking at everything I can? Is what I'm looking at have the best possible SLAs, right? SLA-backed performance and reliability. Look at your SLAs in detail. Make sure that they're telling you what you care about, right? Look, 5 nines for availability of a cloud service is table stakes at this point. Do they have SLAs around SaaS application performance? Do they have SLAs around security processing? If so, how fast are they doing it? And does that SLA include SSL decryption? Since a majority of our traffic's decrypted. So if their SLA is not covering SSL decryption, or it extends what that latency time should be, that should be problematic in your eyes. So take a good look at the SLAs around performance and reliability, and then be able to simplify through consolidation. SASE is giving organizations that opportunity to really take a look across their estate, take a look at what that common use case is, secure user access, no matter where the user is, to a destination, no matter where it is. How do we consolidate those various point solutions down into a single platform? That gives us an ability, right? So we look at the use cases, each with their own products, policies, interfaces. As we consolidate that down into a single integrated platform, we get consistency from the security policy side. We get complete visibility no matter where that user is trying to go. So now we're also driving value-based outcomes. We can reduce total cost of ownership. We think about how many products we have in our environment today, and if some of them are specialized single-use products, there is no economy of scale for that, right? Because that vendor knows we need that product to do this function. What economies of scale can we drive? The way you start driving economies of scale in your secure access solutions is to say, we have a platform that solves multiple use cases in that single platform, right? So now we can actually start getting total cost of ownership in our environment to go in the right direction, right? Which is kind of down and to the right. Simplify infrastructure and operations, right? Because we're eliminating policies, interfaces, and things that we have our teams managing, and we're reducing risk because we're shutting those visibility and inspection gaps down, getting all traffic flowing through the single cloud provider. It's really cleaning things up and reducing that risk profile. So just to summarize, all app and internet traffic needs to be inspected for threats and data loss, period. And that's going to give you the most secure option available. If the other tools you're looking at don't inspect everything, including private app access, it's not the most secure option available. Cloud native scale, performance, elasticity, best in class SLAs. Look, all of that is good marketing material. Look at the SLAs. Make sure that the vendor is putting their money where their mouth is with financially backed credits when it comes to missing out on some of these objectives. Consolidate with use case based approach. As I've continued to pound the table on with this, it's going to help you get consistent policy, simplify infrastructure and operations, and reducing costs. Powerful yet flexible. SASE is powerful. It can do a lot of things. It should do a lot of things, and it should do a lot of things with a single vendor platform. So that's going to allow you to scale with it, right? It's going to solve what you need to today, whether that be replace your SWG with a more secure option, replace legacy VPN with zero trust network access, enable DIA from the branches, whatever that thing is you want to do today. But then those other use cases sit out there and you want to migrate and shift those use cases into the platform later. It's there and it's going to scale with you. Thanks again and have a good day.